Campbell podcast. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell. Excited today to be joined by somebody who I've known now for a couple of years, run across him all the time in the self-storage space, sort of an omnipresent person in our industry. Mike Butcher, Vice President of A&E Construction. Very, very glad to have you come in and join us and share some of your expertise. Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, Thad. Always good to join you, man.
I'm looking forward to this, man. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, and it was kind of cool the way we linked, and I'm going to go into that. But I always ask the same question first. So anyone who watches the podcast, I'm not throwing them off this time. Self-storage is such a unique industry. For me, somebody who's been in a bunch of different careers, had a bunch of different jobs, I got into this space, and it's just so unique. I always like to find out how people manage to get themselves into the self-storage niche specifically.
That's a great one, Dad. Probably like everybody else, just kind of magically showed up in the self-storage industry. So I've been in construction my whole life, started out young in high school, probably give a little credit to my dad. He said, kid, if you're not going to go to college, you're going to do construction, you better be the best you can be at it. So I started out in site work, and I did a lot of heavy civil site work and found my way into the building industry. And somehow A&E, we found ourselves into storage about 10 years ago. We did a small project for public storage, and we were like, oh, the storage industry seems kind of cool. And, before we knew it, we were doing a couple, and I showed up at a convention one day about 6 years ago, and here we are today, building away.
I was going to go down that road a little bit with you because that's how we first met. We first met at an SSA show. You guys actually came in and advertised with us. At the time, the company I was with, we were doing a mastermind event, and you guys came and were the sponsor for a dinner that we did. How important is that for you guys to be going to those events, to be networking in the self-storage space?
I mean, it's been huge for us. I think that's really where we really dove into the self-storage industry. I mean, we were in the industry. We were building for a couple developers and a couple of, big flags. And then we went to the convention, and I showed up at my first convention, and I was walking around the space. I was like, man, self-storage, like, you don't realize how big of a small industry self-storage is till you hit some of these conventions and start meeting people. And it was just networking. We went to the first show. I really didn't know anybody. And then all of a sudden you start meeting people. I met people like yourself, developers, installers, and it's just networking has been huge for us at those shows. And, we're a frequent visitor, and we're going to keep on going.
I love that. I was mentioning earlier, we actually scheduled you coming on the podcast, ironically, through a LinkedIn post that Mitch was on the podcast earlier this year. You've been able to connect with Mitch is one of the biggest players in the development space. How have you been able to connect with people like that and be doing, we're talking not small projects. These are minimum high 7-figure hard cost projects, sometimes 8-figure hard cost projects. How do you think you were able to connect with those level of developers in a way that allowed you to now have so many projects going on?
A lot of it is conventions. A lot of it is networking. People like yourself and some others in the industry that I've met have helped make some connections for us. But I think in reality, I'm an honest builder, right? So it's not always about the bottom line dollar for us. We're all about customer satisfaction. We're all about making sure jobs get done on time. So we've been able to meet some really top developers like, Mitch is a great example. We've been able to meet some great guys like that. And, we produce for guys like Mitch, and that has kind of let us down. Mitch has introduced me to some other guys in the industry, which has been great. And it's like you said, man, networking in this industry is huge. And people in self-storage really are it is a really cool market to be in.
It's so interesting. And I guess I'd ask you that because A&E does construction across a bunch of different asset classes. You're certainly not specific to storage. Is there a tangible, and I haven't worked in those other commercial real estate asset classes, so I can't speak to them specifically, but is there a difference in the storage industry relative to your commercial office guys and your retail guys and your people doing industrial warehouse? Have you noticed a difference in the space?
There's a difference. I would say, I'm sure most people will tell you it's a little more cutthroat when you're running down the retail world and the office space world. But yeah, we're in a bunch of different assets, the type of construction we do. But self-storage is probably one of the few where I found that working with owners like we work with, it's just been like it's a real team partnership on the self storage industry side, and it's been that way since we got into it 10 years ago.
All right, so you brought something up in the first question that when I first asked you about getting into storage that I would feel remiss if I didn't follow up on, which is you talked about your dad and him setting a example for you and telling you a path. How important was that? And tell me a little bit about your dad.
It was great. God rest his soul. Father passed away a few years ago. But no, it was big. My father was in construction his whole life growing up. That's what he did. And I kind of went down the same path. He was out in the field working in construction as a young guy, worked his way up from the field into the office. And, when he finally passed away, he was a senior level guy at a construction firm. And I kind of was going down the same path. And, like I said, coming out of high school, I was, like most kids coming out of high school, working in the field. College really wasn't feeling. And he said, listen, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. So I took that to heart, and I worked my way up I started out as a laborer in the field and worked my way over the years to vice president of a construction company. So
it's so interesting you talk about that. I'm a little older than you, not much, but I went the college route, and in hindsight, went to college because that's what I was expected to do, not because I had any specific plan about what I was going to do with college. So how fortunate that you had someone in your life who could mentor you and absolutely make sure that, hey, if college is not for you, it's not for you.
Yep. Oh no, it was big. It helped me a lot, and there's part of me that go back and say, man, the college days would have been cool in the 4 years and all that, but I've been lucky. I worked really hard, and I've been lucky. I landed at a great company. Here to hopefully end my career and in a long time yet, but it's been good.
Still a little ways to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got ways to go.
Tell me a little bit about that. You talk about A&E, and obviously you talk about it with reverence. What is it about the company you think that makes it such a fit for you and have it allowed you guys to have the presence you have?
Yeah, I mean, A&E, we've been around since 1978. It's a family-run business started by our present owner's father. The kids took it over, Billy and Tony, and they run it truly like a family operation here. So although we're a larger scale sized general contractor, you come into our office on a daily basis here, it is a family atmosphere. So it makes it a pleasant place to work, and people like me and a couple of us here, put our hearts and souls into it, and it pays off.
It's so interesting you brought the word family up because I was on a call yesterday with someone and we were talking about storage, and that was the word she used. It's like a family, man. It's like it's so interesting, and it reminds me of my older sibling growing up, my brother and I, where we were competitive with each other, but in a way that was to push each other, not to try and tear each other down. It's such an interesting thing, and makes sense why A&E would fit so well in the storage world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've found this is the one market that we've been in where self-storage is truly like a family business. I mean, I've made just as many friends in the self-storage industry market in the last 10 years that I have in my, lifetime outside of work. So a lot of these guys I talk to on a daily basis, we talk outside of work, and it is.
It's funny you say that because I talk to Michelle Mack very frequently. Michelle is DDP Roofing, not specific to storage, but we met together. You were helping paid for that dinner and hosted that dinner for us at the mastermind we were at with Michelle. And I find that so interesting because you start becoming friends with people in this industry just because of the way that people operate. Like, it's hard not to want to have a friendship outside of the business side of it.
Yep. No, we've been introduced to a lot of people. We met a lot of people at that dinner. And, when I was in, I think we met at the SSA in New Orleans. 100%. And outside of that, I met up with some other guys who have been on your podcast as well. And relationships have sprung outside of the industry and we're continuing on doing work. And I've been introduced to other people, and it's led into bigger relationships and more business, which is always good.
So I want to go down this road with you is one of the things I really wanted to dig into, because you have an ability to make relationships with people. And it's, something, I don't know if it's inherent, it's something you learn, but I want to pick your brain a little bit about the business development side of things. And you talked about networking, you talked about going to shows. Listen, we both know you go to an SSA show, there's 4,000, 5,000 people there. Not all of them are leaving there with relationships that they didn't go with already. So I want to kind of pick your brain about maybe a couple of things that you concentrate on when you're trying to develop those relationships. What are some tricks of the trade that have served you well?
Honestly, I think more than tricks, it's just being honest, right? And open to relationships. So, we're out. I do, as vice president of construction here. Not only do I run our construction side, but I'm heavily involved in our business development side and out there networking. And, when I'm out at the SSA shows, I tell people all the time, I'm not there to sell, right? Like, I'm not looking to sell a deal when I'm there. I'm just there looking to make relationships, grab a dinner, grab a drink, kind of more talk about things outside of work. What are people into in their personal lives, things like that. And I found the less business talk that happens out there, the more business talk happens when you get home, and it's been good.
It's funny. I was talking to you about the conversation yesterday with the person talking about family and storage, but same conversation we had. She actually asked me, "What's the ROI on the podcast?" Very interesting. Like she's a numbers person, so it made sense that she would ask me that. And I said the same thing. I said, "Hey, look, you have options of who to do business with, right?
Yep.
And there are other good companies out there in almost every niche, right? Listen, A&E, fantastic. I love you. Heard nothing but great things from the people who used you. There are other construction companies out there. At
For
the end
sure.
of the day, we want to do business with people that we like being around because you're getting in a relationship with someone. We spend more time at work than we do at home with our
Oh,
family and our wives. So I think that's such an amazing point that when someone gets to know you, they get to decide, hey, is this someone I want to spend the time with? Listen, we know numbers are going to matter. It's going
yep.
to be important what your price is. If you're 20% higher than another GC, the ability to have a good conversation might not overcome that. But on the flip side, I think that's such an amazing point that you made.
Yeah, no, it's I found it works, right? I mean, you're right. We spend a lot of time with the people we do business with outside, and we're walking jobs, we're traveling, and we're communicating. So those relationships are big, and that's what I'm going to stick to.
Love it. So you talked about honesty and listen, the last couple of years, it has to have been challenging for you guys as the market. Like I'm thinking back to when I got into storage in 2021, 2022, all of a sudden construction prices started going sideways, right? You were seeing steel prices go through the roof. How important is it to have those conversations? And I guess how do you have those conversations with developers when they might have underwritten a job, thinking they're going to get a certain cost, 50, 60, $70 a square foot hard cost. All of a sudden they're at 70, 80, $90 a square foot hard cost. How do you navigate those conversations?
It was a tough one. There was a tough time in the self storage market there, where pricing was really going up by the square foot, and trying to have those communications with the owners. And I think that's where it goes back to the honesty, right? And we had some really strong relationships that we had built up in the 18s through 20s that kind of carried us through 21 and 22. And we were able to be open and honest with the clients, and kind of open up the books a little bit, and say, hey, this is kind of where the costs are coming in. And I'll be honest with you, skipping past that to 2023 and now 2024, some of the best phone calls I've made over the last year and a half have been, hey man, pricing just came back in, and like I'm seeing 2018 numbers.
Yeah, that's great, right?
Yep.
As and I'll ask this, I guess, a pretty blunt question coming off of that. Have you seen a reduction in the flow of jobs coming your way, given what we thought? It hasn't played out anywhere near as much as I thought it was going to, but thought there was going to be a pretty significant, I thought at one point we might see 25, 30, 40% less development deals going through. Have you seen a slowdown in developers, bidding out new jobs?
There's been a slowdown. I don't think it's been as bad as we kind of were anticipating, because we were really expecting it. I'll say outside of the self storage market, I've seen the slowdown more than in the self storage market. For everybody who's been in it, it's been resilient, which has been great. So it's definitely a slowdown, but fingers crossed it's going to pick back up.
Yeah, it's funny. I would go on Radius earlier this year thinking this is finally going to be the year where we see the slowdown. 2023, there was actually over 1,000 new facilities opened up, which was a little below 18, 19, 20, but pretty
Yep.
similar. Obviously, COVID slowed things down,
Yep.
for reasons nobody could control. 2024, it's like every time I go on, I'm thinking the slowdown is going to show up in the numbers, but the new openings are keeping pace. It's kind of crazy.
It's kind of wild, the self-storage industry. I was talking to some guys the other week. We had a couple of some of the big storage guys in our office, and we were talking. I said, first convention I ever went to, the first question I asked somebody was like, hey, how long can this self-storage industry like kind of go? It's like another 2 years, another 3 years. Like, how long can it go? And a guy from Janus looked right at me and said, Mike, I've been saying that for 20 years.
Yeah,
And that I keep getting that every year.
The very first conversation I ever had with a developer was a guy, Bill Leitner, out of Alabama, and his daughter was going to Princeton doing finance, and she would bust his chops all the time, like, Dad, come on, you're self-storage, like, what kind of crazy bad industry is that? And he's like, it's not very sexy until you open up the P&L.
Yeah.
You start seeing the profit and loss statement, and you start seeing what guys are selling facilities for, and the returns they're getting on investors' money, it starts to get a little bit more sexy.
For sure.
Another thing that I really wanted to pick your brain on, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I wanted to kind of ask you, and we actually talked about this off camera at the beginning. Fitness is a big part of your life. Like it's apparent we've never talked about this. It's not something I know specifically. Just from seeing you and the shape that you're always in and the way that you carry yourself, it's apparent that and that never happens on accident. That's one thing I've learned in life, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously something you care dearly about and you spend some time on. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something that kind of kicked in a few years back. I probably tie it into losing my father. Had a little bit of a heavier set guy and a wife and 2 younger daughters at the time. And I'm out there coaching soccer and I can't keep up with the young kids. And so I just kind of got into it, started the fitness journey a little bit and started getting a little bit of better shape. And then I realized, exercising and fitness ties into a lot of other things. You feel better, you feel healthier, pay more attention to the family, can pay more attention to the job. So it's just been something that's been really good for me. And, I try to get there 5-6 days a week. And there's a lot of stress, self-storage is a great industry, but in this business, there's a lot of stress involved. And you can sometimes take that home with you. And I found a quick little 50-minute trip to the gym. Kind of, you leave it with the iron and things are much better when you get home.
I absolutely love that. I think you said something so important, right? I talked earlier, you're talking, 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, 15, some of these really, really big facilities, you might be getting up into the $20 million hard costs. There's always big problems, right? You don't have those types of projects without having big problems. You don't sit with the vice president of your name of a construction company without having to answer some pretty challenging phone calls. And interesting how you tied that to being able to leave it in the gym.
Yeah, and that's where it stems to. You hit it right, man. There's not a day that goes by. Not too many people call me to say, "Hey, Mike, how's your day going?" Right?
So why you wanted to come on the podcast? This is
nice.
100%.
Yeah. So no, it ties out perfectly. It's kind of like it's a stress reliever. You feel better. So I'm gonna stick to it, man. I see you've been hitting pretty hard. So I hope you're getting ready for that marathon.
I got a 7-mile run in Sunday. I got an 8-miler this coming Sunday. So I'm slowly, which doesn't sound like much relative to 26.2, but 13 weeks ago I couldn't run a mile. So
yeah, no, that's
progress. I'm trying to slim down a little bit. I'm still carrying a little too much weight. I'm trying to look like you, man.
We all get that problem, Dad.
Listen, it is what it is, right? I'm still happy because I'm out doing the stuff that, and I think you nailed it. One of the big things for me, I was having a miserable week last week. Like you go through it, just everything was like a problem. I went out and ran 7 miles down to Wildwood on the beach on Sunday morning, and all of a sudden you just feel better.
Yeah.
It just kind of all goes away.
Yeah, man. Problems don't seem so big when you get done that.
Isn't that the truth, man? So tell me a little bit. You go to the gym. What's your routine? What are you doing when you hit there?
Man, I'm all over the place. I'm in my early 40s here, so I'm trying to back down. But right now, I'm still in that heavy lifting with the younger kids. So I'm more of a lifter than I am a cardio guy. So I'm definitely not. You're not going to see me running 6 miles, Dad.
So it's funny because that was my routine for. I've been seeing a personal trainer for over 2.5 years, and it's deadlift, squats, bench press, and then work off of that.
Yep.
I still am my mom laughs at me. She's 75, and her friend that's like 60 something squats and deadlifts more than I do. But I'm not worried about it. I'm getting better.
Nope.
Little gains. I can still bench press more than I could squat and deadlift. But
Yeah,
interestingly enough, that building that muscle mass is better for men our age than going and doing cardio.
oh, it's 100% better. And, I do some cardio, but lifting weights, like I said, it makes you feel good. I feel better. I feel healthier. I think I do better at my job for it. So the family's happier. And I can definitely go out and run around with the kids. My kids are a little bit older now, but I can still get out there and run around with them now, which is better.
Not getting left behind in the soccer field.
I am not.
I was going to talk about that. It's one of the challenges that we have in our job is you're dealing with these massive problems. Right? What seems like it when you're at your job, and then you go home to a wife and kids, and this is true of 99.99% of the world. Most people don't deal with $1 million problems ever.
Yep.
Never, ever, ever deal with that. So how do you go from, all right, I got a construction site where the cost of steel just went from $1.5 million to 2.4, and then I got to go home and I got to just, I got to be a normal dad for my kids, and I got to be a husband for my wife. And no matter how much I try and explain it, they're just never going to really understand it the way that we do.
No, they don't at home, right? It's a little bit different, and it's a complication we all go through. So, like I said, the gym has been a big part of that for me, and I use that as kind of my outlet. And then I go home, and I'm lucky. I got a great wife at home, and I got a 16 and 15-year-old daughter. So right now, when I get home, even though $1 million construction problems seem big, driving around my daughter with a permit is a much bigger problem for me right now.
I can tell you, I got an 18-year-old who's out driving right now, so I feel you. And when you add her to the insurance, enjoy that piece of it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, the insurance company was nice enough to tell me I got like 30 days from the day she gets her license, so I'm going to use all that.
More than triple.
Yeah.
My insurance policy. I already had the third car on the policy. When I added her to it, it was more than tripled. So that was a fun little. The cost of doing business. Wouldn't trade it for the world, but
it's all relative, right?
100%. So interesting to kind of pick your brain. You mentioned earlier that construction costs are starting to come back down a little bit. Maybe seeing like 2018 prices and getting back to a place. We know interest rates have been an issue on our side of it. And, as a developer, you were underwriting 2-3 years ago at 5.5%, 6% construction loans, maybe getting 80% LTC from the bank. Now we're lucky if we can get 65, 70, and you're at, you could be double digits. Do you foresee the construction costs staying down for the next couple of years? And I'm asking that for myself as a developer. Because it's really important right now trying to make deals work.
Yeah, I mean, we get this question a lot, and it's really hard on our side to project what's going to happen in the world these days and in the environment these days. And, right now things have come down and they've been kind of steady for a little while right now. And I think, some of it is a subcontractor base. There's great subcontractors in the self-storage industry. And I think those guys are, looking and seeing where the markets are at. And I think they've been helping out a lot. So we're hoping, for our sake and for the owner's sake, that the costs stay down and they continue to run down a little bit for the foreseeable future. But I would love to say I could predict the future, but I probably wouldn't be on here talking with you if I could, right?
I wouldn't be here either. I would be gone doing something different. I want to ask a question following up on something you said earlier, which is you'll go to conventions and it's more about just meeting people and getting to know them, but the business tends to come after. Tell me what you're doing for someone. When they call you, you met somebody, you made a relationship, they call up Mike and they say, hey, I'm interested in using A&E. At what point in someone's project are you guys getting involved and how?
I mean, I would say for a majority of our projects, Dad, we're getting in early. And that's kind of where we've been able to cut our teeth in the self-storage industry is, I have guys call me up and they have a set of plans. I have guys call me up, they got a picture. A lot of them call me up and they got a sketch on a napkin, So what we've been successful in is kind of helping developers guide them through the design process well before, sometimes I got projects I've been working on for a year and a half before construction even breaks ground. So I think, advice to developers is your GC is your friend. To get a good one, the earlier they're involved, us helping drive the way the design is going to go and the way things go together can really help the VE and the end cost on the projects. And that's kind of where we like to be involved if we can.
Just making sure that somebody's not making some of those mistakes that can end up costing some significant money.
Right. And it could just be, at this time where the industry stands, that this design, 6 months ago, one design may have been a little cheaper than the other, but now the way the trends are going, the different design has become a little bit cheaper. So just being able to help guide developers down the right road and get them to the best cost.
Oh, I love that. Listen, I always try to honor people's time and make sure we keep this to a digestible time. So we're coming up on that 30-minute mark. What I want to make sure of is people that are watching the podcast that haven't connected with you yet and they want to get in touch with Mike Butcher and be able to communicate with A&E. What's the best way to get a hold of you? How someone go about developing a relationship with A&E?
Yeah, I would say best way to get a hold of me is email. It's my, mbutcher@aeconstruction.com, or they can get me on my cell phone. I put it out there. I don't hide. It's 484-576-9008. And let me know. Shoot me a message. We could definitely connect. And we'll be out in Vegas here coming up for ISS and September, or for SSA in September. So looking forward to making some great connections. So anybody who's going to be there and wants to connect, just give me a call.
Love it. I'll be out there. We'll make sure we'll get a pic. When I go to the shows now, I always get pictures with all my old podcast guests. So we're going to make sure we get a picture and throw it up.
Absolutely.
Out there. Listen, as I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing some knowledge, giving us a little insight into what's going on in the industry. And what this podcast is really about is getting to know a little bit about Mike Butcher. And as I said, I think in business, so much of it is about doing business with people that you like. Looking forward. I actually got a couple of development projects in the pipeline that I'm working on. So I'm looking forward to getting in touch with you and making sure that we get to touch base on that side of it as well.
Absolutely, Thad. Thanks for having me. We've been talking about this for a while, so it was cool to spend 30 minutes with you, get to connect, and look forward to seeing you out in Vegas here and connect a little bit more.
That reminds me, I got to get booked, man. I'm a little bit behind the times on getting Vegas.
Yeah, man.
Tell them it's running out of time.
Get your friends together.
This week's episode of the Self Storage Made Simple podcast. Mike Butcher, Vice President of A&E Construction. Amazing time. This guy's got absolutely crazy energy, which I hesitate to say about anyone from Philadelphia because, but I live outside of Philly, so I got to give him a little credit. You're always like this, too. This is not a 30-minute, all of a sudden Mike Butcher showed up different. He's the same guy every time I see him, which is why I was so excited to have him on. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you got anything of value out of this at all, please click the like button, give us a quick comment, subscribe to the channel so you get all the upcoming episodes, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.